Welcome to the July 12th, 2025 PCR Coast Division Saturday Meetup. We have kind of an exciting event today. We have Earl Girbovan is going to do a couple of quick clinics, one on building a Kitwood Hills turntable and one on the Milpitas Materials company. So and then we'll just jump into coast modeling. So with that, I'm just going to throw it over to Earl.
Okay, let me get my screen shared here.
Cool.
So we're on to my screen,
You
right?
want to turn your video on too?
The computer doesn't like it sometime. But I'm sharing the screen, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I've got two big projects and one kind of smaller project that I've been working on that I kind of want to talk to you guys about. So I'm in the process of working on a home layout, and the home layouts can have a combination of standard gauge and narrow gauge. And the narrow gauge is going to run between two towns. And I don't like running steam engines backward. I know the prototype does, but I really don't like running them backward. Plus, I have a galloping goose that running backwards is going to look funny. So I went looking for a narrow gauge turntable and came across Otter Creek Railroad on YouTube. And he's got actually 3 videos about building the Kitwood Hills turntable. And, you know, Ken was just talking about British modelers. This is a British firm, and it's a guy, little garage shop guy, that makes these, you know, a batch at a time. And the kit's been fantastic. Actually, about 2 of them, because I want to be able to turn the locomotive in each town. So this is the website for Kitwood Hill. He makes a lot of different things along with the turntable. And then this is, you know, the various turntables in both HO and O scale. And I ordered it. It took him, I think, a month and a half to get into the batch that he was making, and about a week and a half for it to be shipped from England. So actually came over really quick. You know, the interesting thing with Otter Creek, if you look at the picture on the right, Alan Loazzo, if the name sounds familiar or the railroad in the background looks familiar, Alan Loazzo is Ed Loazzo's son. And you guys know Ed Loazzo here in Los Altos as a resident S scale guy.
Oh, yes.
So Alan's actually a N&W engineer living in North Carolina, and he has a side business now of making fast tracks, turnouts, and selling them on the web. So I know a lot of the O-scalers know him because he makes, you know, narrow gauge turnouts, but he's got these things on the web, and what I've heard so far is he actually does a pretty good job of them, and you can get on his website and order them. So the turntable from Kitwood Hill starts off, this is like the beginning of the kit, and you can see everything's really, really nicely cut and etched plywood. The bigger circle, you can see where the ring rail goes. The solid thing is the pit for the turntable. And you see some holes, and I'll show them to you again later. These are alignment holes for, you see the pinholes here. There's a lot of alignment and fixturing and tooling built into this, so it makes the assembly really easy. So once you glue it all together and paint it and kind of get ready to attach the ring rail, this is what it looks like. I wanted to model one of them with a concrete ring, so all the little tie pieces are glued to, you know, the ring painted gray and weathered to look like concrete. So this is kind of like building a fast tracks thing where you glue down some PCB ties, then you glue down some sleeper ties, then you solder it all together. They give you a pre-bent ring rail, and it wasn't a small enough radius, so I got a hold of a rail bender and just kept running the ring down till it looked like it was about the right diameter. because, when you solder this, you really don't want to stress it. You really want this, the ring to be concentric. Back to those tooling holes. So they give you a fixture that you kind of glue together. You can see the little splice plates. And this is the template to solder in the ring rail. And you start off by soldering, one end and kind of working your way around. And I did like every other tie, then came back and filled in. And when it's done, it looks like this. You've got a really perfectly concentric ring rail. The other thing that he suggests, and I did, is put a double tie where the splice is. So you're not heating up an old joint and shifting things around. This actually went really quickly. There's a couple little holes here, and I'll talk about these again in a minute. These are plungers for electrical contact. The problem with most turntables is electrical contact. You got a wiper on the ring rail, you're maybe doing the center shaft, and those things just never seem to work right. So he's got these electrical plungers, and I'll show you another part in a minute that really do good with electrical. So this rail on top is the top of the pit wall, and you see some posts that are glued into laser cut holes, and these posts get glued into these notches around the perimeter of the pit. And then he's got some laser cut sleepers that kind of go in and fill in between all that. And again, the bushing for the motor shaft. And then, the ring just flips over, glues into this. So I didn't have a good picture when I built it because I was too far along, but this is what the whole center looks like with these little plungers. And you just solder some wires underneath the board. And this is really the most critical part of the kit, I think, this bearing assembly of the center shaft. This comes pre-assembled. I'll show you the other side in another slide, but you can see it's a PCB with concentric rings, and this is what the little plungers ride on. The interesting thing, this guy must spend years boxing this kit up. Every little set of sub-assemblies is in a bag, and this is the motor mount bag down here with the motor mounts. You can see it's all tab, it all tab and slot, everything fits. And then the small parts are even bagged within the bag. So he gives you extra parts, extra screws. It's kind of really nice. Keeps the carpet from eating all the parts that you drop. So you buy the motor separate. So you go onto eBay or Amazon and buy this little gear motor. And this motor works really well. His tooling is all set up for the screw holes. Everything seems to fit, and it's already, a bit over half an RPM. So it's the right speed. The next thing in the kit assembly is mounting the track on the turntable itself. And you got to solder some feeder wires on there. The cutouts in the turntable for the feeder wires, there's not a lot of slot. You really have to have them pretty well positioned. And you can see with the arrows, there's not a lot of room if you make a mistake. So what I did is came up with a little fixturing kind of thing. I got the blue wire soldered on there, and you can see at the tip of the red arrow, there's a little mark on the rail where I have to solder the other wire. And I really didn't think that I could keep it lined up and not lose the position. So the tooling block kind of points to where the wire has to get soldered. So I was able to solder it exactly where I needed it soldered, and everything seemed to fit really well. So this is the other side of that center shaft that I showed you. And the top side has this kind of a split PCB assembly. So you solder, the track feeders to that. The the center shaft, comes through. This is a brass block, and then this is a wood spacer. So this thing comes epoxied, pre-assembled. Everything is straight and square and plumb. So it's really nice. He gives you this part pre-assembled. And then the wood part keys into this square part down here. And you can see there's kind of a long side, a short side, a short side. So the wires kind of all get jammed up inside here. And then this kind of locks onto the bridge. So when you build it, you don't glue this to this, just the friction holds it in place. And the turntable really revolves on the rollers. So they're, I think, 3D printed rollers. They're on little metal axles that you glue in. And, even first time out the chute, it just ran really well for me. He also gives you, so this is everything kind of put together, kind of a test pass. He also gives you some alignment fixture, an alignment fixture. The problem is getting the rails centered so that when you turn the turntable, they end up in the same place. So the masking tape is holding some pins that tend to fall through, but the little spacer here, you line it up, spin the turntable around, make sure it lines on the other side. If you're happy, you super glue the rails in place, and you got a turntable with everything lined up. One of the things when I was watching the Otter Creek fella, and again, if this turntable is at all interesting to you, I really suggest watching. He's got 3 videos. It's a really good step-by-step on how to assemble it. And I've referred back to that video a number of times. When you glue in these gallows supports, it's all end grain and there's not really much strength. So he suggested, and I did also, is I pinned the centerpiece. It's just to hold it in place because you work on these things, you bump it, it falls apart, and you say bad words. So this kind of held everything together when I was fitting things. The next thing is gluing, is forming the support rods, the truss rods. And he got me a little bit nervous when I watched the video saying, it was really difficult. It was frustrating for him to do. So I didn't want to get tied up in that. And he also mentioned he seemed to have to handle everything a lot. And I really didn't want to be handling everything. So I made up a template in PowerPoint. And, Phil talks a lot about PowerPoint as a modeling tool, and I use it quite a bit also. So I measured where the ties are, and that's what these little rectangles at the bottom are. These are, where the lengths I needed. Drew in the little tie pieces, drew in where the truss rods had to be bent to, and sat down and bent up a bunch of truss rods. This actually went pretty well because once you bend up one, you use it as a template to build up the others. And there's some give. There's not a lot of give, but there's some give in bending these and fitting them. But this actually worked out well. It actually went a lot faster than I thought it was going to go. The only thing I had to do is mark where the intermediate truss rod poked through, because you have to count ties each way, and when you're in the heat of the moment, you miscount the number of ties, then things are lopsided. So I put a couple of pieces of tape so I didn't screw up too bad. And this is what it looks like with all the truss rods in place. And I built up. This is on top of a little fixture I made that I can drop the turntable in and spin it around and all that. And so this is the turntable going. So this is the 0.6 RPM motor. And it's a pretty reasonable speed, maybe a touch fast. I didn't really have a feel for how fast 0.6 RPM was, but that's a pretty good speed. So that's the turntable. And you can see I kind of, weathered the pit, did some dirt and things like that. So I got one down and one to go. So any questions on the turntable before I go into the next part?
Um, Earl, could
Yeah.
you put up the URL or something for his website? I want to see if he has something that it would work with a standard gauge model, uh,
Okay.
not
I'll
of a
do.
gallows type turntable, but a full pit um, bridge type turntable.
Okay. It's Kitwood Hill. If you just web search Kitwood Hills, it pops right up. But I'll try to after I'm done with all this. So next project.
I threw a link in the chat.
Cool. Thank you, Phil.
Yeah.
So next project is Milpitas Materials. This is a project for Seth Newman's layout. And this is another one of those things where, oh yeah, just a few pieces to fit together and we'll have a nice model. Should only take you a month. Vis-a-vis the gravel crusher I did. So this is the batch plant over in Milpitas. And we've got a few pretty good photos of the plant itself. Front view, this is the back view. They have kind of a side view. So we kind of know what the plant is. The problem is we don't have a lot of detailed pictures and we don't really have any real dimensions to work from. There's nothing in here that is X feet wide. So we started off, and this has been on the layout for a while, of taking those pictures, blowing them up to sort of HO scale, gluing them on some foam core, and this has been the industry for quite a while, stuck back in the corner. But kind of a good place to start. It was hard, the first time trying to conceptualize this thing and really see the angles and how things fit together. So I sat down with a knife and a bunch of foam core and a hot glue gun and started mocking things up. You got to start somewhere, got to see how much space we had, scaling it to a cement truck that you'll maybe see in another picture. And at least this way we had a feel for how things looked. But I tried drawing it 2D, and you can't draw 2D because there's too many things going on. So got into Tinkercad, and I drew up a model in Tinkercad. And this kind of gave us a base to start from. But as we were looking at it, we didn't have a plan view. So we really didn't know how things fit together, how the bins overlap, the relative size, and all that. So we got onto Google and were able to get kind of a plan view. And it actually worked out good because we didn't realize that those bins are split into two portions, and you can see the dividers if you look at these pictures long enough. And then we got the details for the conveyor system. You can see there's diverters that drop it into the different bins. That actually worked out really good because I'll show you in a minute, we could put a divider in the middle of the bin, which really strengthened the bin. And then we got some ideas for details for all the tanks and things that are around the main building. So this is the first print out of the chute. And you can see this is the divider, which strengthens it. These are supports for the diverters. I looked at scratch building the bins out of styrene, and I really didn't think I could do a good job, with the angles and fitting everything, and just decided going to 3D print the whole thing. The other thing we looked at, this is that kind of shed section below. So the legs fit up into 3D printed slots. They're just friction fits. And this whole thing is going to be a sub-assembly. There's two bins, and I'll talk about the other bin in a minute, but trying to keep it as two sub-assemblies, and then I can sheathe this with the right sheathing, put the right roof on, and then go back and hang piping and supports and everything off of it. So this was actually good to build a first article, because then when we tried to drive a truck under it, the legs were too close together and you couldn't fit a truck underneath. So it also, the proportions weren't right and couldn't really figure out what was going on. So I went back to Tinkercad and started playing with the drawing that I did, and then took a look at the back view. So we had a good back view of the whole structure. And the nice thing you can do with PowerPoint and Tinkercad is I could overlay this thing that I drew onto the model or onto the prototype. And you can see, okay, the width is about right. The height is about right. These things kind of line up. The angle's pretty close. So I was pretty comfortable. Yeah. Sorry, I jumped ahead. So I was pretty comfortable with finally getting the right proportions on the model. So I went back to Tinkercad and redrew or modified the slope angles, modified this. I widened up where the legs go. And then for it to come out right, I really did want to filament print it. So believe it or not, this takes 27 meters of filament, and that's just for the one bin. So I've got this new modeling concept. I call it modeling while you sleep, because what I did is I fired it up in the evening, went to bed, woke up the next morning, and the print was just about finished. And better than I could have built it, and I think a lot stronger. So this is what it looks like with the front and rear bins printed. And then the core, you can see it's roofed and all that. In some of my presentations before, I've told you guys that 3D filament is not sandable. I lied. I did the first pass of this with a matte white filament that I had for another job, another project. And I found that the matte filament sands really well. The gloss stuff doesn't, but the matte stuff sands actually really, really well. So between that and then a can of auto primer that's the filler type, I could mask out or sand out most all of the print lines, and came out pretty good. The only problem that I got into now is some of the assembly is difficult because there's no straight surfaces. There's a lot of angles and things kind of tend to be in the way. So I've had to play some games when I started mounting bracketry and components to all this. And the first one was even gluing the legs to the back bin, because you have to have it at the right height. The legs have to be plumb and square and all that good stuff, but you can't get a square in there. And so what I ended up doing, this is the piece that actually goes up here. It's upside down. I clamped this to a tooling block. You can see the clamp up here, put the legs in place, make sure everything was where I want it, and then got some gel super glue, and I would take out a leg, put some gel super glue on the top, put it up inside, make sure it was where I wanted it to be, and then go away for 10 minutes and then come back, do each leg that way. And then once I was done, flip it over and, put more super glue kind of up inside here. But, these Loctite application bottles, I've got one for gel and one for liquid, are really nice for doing it. It's a nice little tip. It doesn't splash all the glue like those cheapy little squeak toothpaste container things. So Home Depot and all those stores have a bunch of those. This was another place where I had to mount some bracketry to support a catwalk. And again, it's hard to hold it in place in space and at the right height, because as you guys know, the stuff going in there crooked looks terrible. So I was able to just space up some blocks and things to get these catwalk supports at the right height. And that's kind of what I'm doing. So like I mentioned, trying to work the two bins of sub-assemblies as long as I can. The only problem is the legs get kind of spindly. So the whole structure is supported, the prototype at least, on some concrete pads. So this is one of my test pieces for a concrete pad. And this was just to make sure I had the leg spacing correctly. This, for people that don't 3D print, this is what the inside of a 3D print looks like. You can specify the infill percentage. You can specify the number of top layers and bottom layers and side layers and a whole bunch of stuff. And I didn't want to waste time and filament on printing top and bottom layers. So this is a print with no top and bottom layers. And the nice thing, this comes out of the printer in about 9 minutes. So it comes out really fast. And if I have to make changes, it's easy to do. So I got the spacing right, the truck fits underneath, and everybody's kind of happy. One of the other support things that I had to do was this piece sticking out of the side of the core. And again, I had to hold it straight and plumb and parallel and level in space. And again, it was difficult to do. So you can't see too well, but this whole thing is suspended on this steel bar. So the bar goes all the way to the other side. And that way I know this is all level. I can square this piece like this and was able to glue it in. So lots of details, lots of things to finish up, but this is kind of where I am right now. And you can see I've got the concrete bases with the top and bottom, actually printed. There is a big block of concrete in the middle between the two things. I think that keeps it from racking side to side because there's kind of no side to side support. So I've got that printed in here. There's a hole in here for wires because I'm going to put lights inside. So that gives me a nice big via to run lighting because this whole piece is hollow inside. So that's kind of where I am today. I'm still working on some details, but after I get, and by the way, this is support for the catwalk. There's a catwalk on top, and you can 3D print something that sticks out about 1 millimeter. So it's to use a technical term, a sticky outie. It doesn't do any other supports underneath. So that gives me a nice square, flat, level place to glue the catwalk onto, because otherwise there's nothing to register. And you know how hard it is to glue those things in place. So after I get this building done, there's a couple other things to do on the project. There's a big tank on the left side. There's a couple taller, smaller tanks that have to get built. There's another tank on the right side. There's a little dust collector in the front corner. There's these additive tanks of all these different sizes that are on the left front side. Here's the back view of it. There's ducting and piping and wiring and God knows what that has to get done. There is a dust collector on the back side that I have to add. There's actually 2 of them. So the problem is I want to finish this thing in my lifetime. So probably going to make some concessions here and there. A lot of the man cages and stuff, there's things from Walters. We've got some pieces from other kits and hopefully they fit. But this is the project. I was hoping that, this was going to go a little faster, but I just see a lot of details and things that are going to take some time. But the nice thing, it's all kind of sub-assemblies and I can just add them over time. So that's the other big project. So this kind of just, chips away as a background project for me. So the last little project, and then I'll stop droning on, is my small little project. You know, you guys know I model like the 20s and 30s, and I like the funky stuff and all that. And a lot of interesting things get built or home built back in the backwoods. And there was a picture I saw, a truck, probably in an old Brian Nolan diorama or something, of like a half track, kind of a half track kind of truck. And Sierra West came out with a similar kind of thing, uh, both in HO and an O. And I kind of liked the truck, but I didn't like the $50 price tag. It wasn't worth quite that much to me. So, yeah, I've been kind of wanting to do this half tracky thing for quite some time. The Lynn truck is kind of interesting. There's lots of prototype photos on the web. They came in different styles. They had things like this, these dump bodies that you could use to even load a gondola, although sometimes the loading didn't go quite as planned. But courtesy of Lawrence Kroll, I am the recipient of a couple N-scale tank kits. And if you take an N-scale tank, tread with road wheels and all that stuff, and cut it down to two wheels, which is pretty much what the Lynn truck has, and glue it onto a Mack truck, now I've got my little Mack truck half track. So a little more weathering and some details, and I've got my funky little half track. So that's what I'm doing. I just have to get back to work and work on my other turntable and work on Milpitas Materials, and then maybe work on my home layout. Back to you, Phil.
That was great, Earl. Thank you. That was super. Any questions for Earl? I think the biggest question I have is what percentage of the conduit do you think you'll do on that cement structure?
I don't know.
That conduit looked to me to be quite concerning to model.
I think I'll do it till I get fed up with it.
Yeah.
You have to have a certain amount of complexity to make it look right. And I think the hard part is like hiding some of the ends, or I don't know. It depends how hard it is to cut and fit everything. I don't want to make a lifetime job of it.
Cool. Well, thanks, Earl. Really appreciate that. That was a great update. I guess I'll throw it open for anyone else with their current modeling. Anybody got anything they're working on they'd like to talk about? Earl's the only person modeling?
Shows you what kind of life I have.
You can pull weeds in my garden all day long if you'd like.
I got enough of that.
I like the fact that you have figured out a way to schedule in sleep in the modeling effort.
Yeah, I thought that was a pretty good idea. The modeling while you sleep idea.
I like that. It's fascinating watching the work you do. I'm just so impressed.
Just bit by bit. I don't know if you guys have been on the Sierra West website. He does have a lot of these really interesting little, 20s and 30s trucks and things like that. And it's amazing, what the 3D printing lets these guys do. And I've tried to recreate some stuff, and the work he does, the detail is just incredible. The time it takes to really make those things accurate. The only problem is the $40, $50, $60 price tag. But you do got to pay the guy for his time.
Yeah, that's the challenge. Everybody's gotta figure out how to make money for their time. So
I was actually kind of disappointed. He came out with this tie mill, a little backwoods thing, looked like an old fine scale miniature kit actually, uh, to make, for cutting ties. And uh, since everything's all about me, he actually has a riverfront kit that he's talked about for about 2 years now that I was looking forward to him putting out. I was hoping he was going to put that out first, but it looks like the riverfront is end of the year best case, and that's the key parts to one of my towns on my home layout. So I'm hoping he gets that pretty soon, so I know what he's got, so I can allow for it.
okay,
Uh,
so
I just want to say that I don't have a picture of this yet because it just came in the mail yesterday. But I got some HO scale track cars, as the SP would call them, but speeders, what everybody else calls them. And I'm astonished at how small they are. This is the one I have, and I'm not, maybe gonna try and put this up on the here, if I can see how tiny it is. 3D printed. I can't get it in front of my camera yet without there. That's how small it is. Um, and how delicate. I've already broken two of the hand holding the extensions that were used to manipulate the track wheel off the rails when something was coming, when an actual train was coming. Anyway, it's a bit of modeling. I've actually put something up on my blog site about my efforts with a 1959 Ravel uh, kit that for included a speeder and speeder trailer, and it seems gigantic compared to the one that's actually scaled. Okay.
so here I have a. No one else has a share. I'll share something. I'm actually going to try to do a clinic on this if there's interest, but so this is a picture of a wall area that's intended to have a backdrop. So what I decided to do is do a 3 foot high printed backdrop. And I'll go through the process. I used actually the panorama in my iPhone to take the photo and then processed it in Photoshop. But what I did here, this is basically the plywood is on the wall to protect the wall. And I'm going to glue linoleum on this to put the backdrop on. And the blue line down here of tape is designed to tear off the linoleum glue when I put it on. And this board over here is built out over I have blinds in this room. So I built a 1/2 inch piece of plywood that comes out over the blinds. And I've got a bunch of pictures of how that was done. So the idea is that way the backdrop will be continuous. And then what I did was I rolled, oh, hang on, I'm doing the wrong pictures here. I got to close this one. Then what I do is I rolled linoleum on it and glued it on and coved it in the corners. So this is what it looks like. Again, that piece going over the blinds there. This end here is rolled around and this end just goes up against this mirror. And you see the tape is removed. And the idea is that the module is going to go right up underneath this. So I did all the backdrop before I put the module in. And I didn't take a picture with just the backdrop in because I got so excited and put the module in. So, oh, hang on. Go back here. So this is what it looks like now with the module put in place there that goes in there. And I bought a laser level for like 35 bucks for a Bosch laser level on Amazon on a deal. And I set the laser level up for the top of the wood height in the module. So that way it extends across. You can see the line there. So these are all leveled to that line, which extends over to the other module that's already in the room. So you can kind of see what that looked like. You can see where the line is on there. I took a bunch of pictures of the line, more than I needed to take, but this is basically what it looks like right now. Is you can see the lighting is in. This is the corner module over here. I have a 4-foot module that's going to go between here. That's my Wilder Ranch module. And then I actually have cut, and I need to assemble in the garage. There's a control cabinet that's going to sit right here and go in under the layout. And then there's a set of modules that come out off of here. So you walk on this side or this side of them. So I don't know if that's of interest, kind of going through that process. These are 2 prints, and there's actually a line. You can barely see it in between them there. They're 2 3x6 prints from Office Depot. So it was 140 bucks for the prints for the backdrop, but the backdrop is actually a view of Moss Landing. And so I took a few pictures to kind of see what it looks like when you take low pictures from the layout. Kind of see what the backdrop looks like. And it doesn't look unreasonable. So anyway, that's kind of one sharing. Then the other thing that I did want to share was this. On New Tracks on Wednesday, Jeff Jordan did a little clinic on this. I don't know if anybody's bought one of these things, but I just bought a couple of these. They're 16 bucks for 2 of them on Amazon. And what they are is they're basically a little player, and you connect it up to your computer, and it looks like a hard drive, and you can upload a WAV file or an MP3 file into it, and it'll play the file. You can set it up to either play a single file, or you can put multiple files in, and it has basically a search function where it plays different ones. Comes with a push button and a battery. What I need to test, I believe this is true, but the one thing I do need to test is see if you can put if you put the USB on it when it's just sitting there, will it continue to just charge the battery and play? Because I have some voltage bucks that are about $1.50. So with those, you can take 12 volts, knock it down to 5, connect it to a USB micro cable and plug it in here, and then you have continuous power. So it seemed to me like basically for $8 or $9, you can get a sound location on your layout. So all of a sudden it makes sense to have 3 or 4. So I'm going to try a couple of these for the club in Pleasanton. And I did want to do a water fill tank, water tower tender fill, where you stop, you push a button, and you wait for it to run and fill your tender. So you make an audio recording that's 45 seconds long for the wait, or a minute, or whatever you want people to wait.
Yeah, same thing Dave Adams has. I think he used the toilet flushing as the fill sound.
Yep. But like I said, I thought these were pretty good. I'll put the link to those in the chat also, if anybody's interested. So, by the way, is there interest in that backdrop as a clinic and going through, kind of the steps to that, or is it just so obvious that it doesn't make sense?
Well, it's always interesting to see how you stitch the photos together.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting to see how you coved between parallel surfaces using foam blocks, and how that looks from different angles. I think that you showed an angle that was not the most flattering angle from one side, but if you look at it straight on, I think it looked very good.
There is a little bit there of that wiggle on the one side where it comes out and you kind of see it, but that was unavoidable. I decided I didn't want to take the blinds out, because then I would have taken the blinds out. So, and I'm leaving if you go back here, that one image I had, hang on. So, from a room perspective, I decided not to just continue the backdrop around here and close the room off. I thought about doing that. I mean, I thought about running the backdrop. The backdrop on this side will actually start not here, but about 6 feet this way, right about here. And because right here where you can't see right off of the picture here, there's a TV, there's a cabinet with a TV on top. So what I'm doing is I'm leaving from the beginning of the TV around this corner over to here. I'm just leaving that open. And part of it is you really can't see very well here, but these windows have a view out over Pleasanton. So you can see about 20 miles out of these windows. So they're kind of nice to have open. But yeah, and you can see the lighting on the ceiling too. I've got most of that all pretty well set up. In fact, if I go back here a little bit, show you these are, if you look at that, there's this hole over here. That's actually a secondary control panel. Those are taking the clips out. This is my lighting panel, and it's all set up to connect some terminal blocks and connect into the lighting system. So that's what you'll see on the front for the lighting. I guess I should have turned them over. And these are all the turnout controls that are going to mount inside, and then this is the control panel they connect to. And this is the other control panel. And the way I wired it was I did basically, there's a switch and a light for each turnout. So you're gonna have 4 wires for each turnout. So the way it's wired is that 2 turnouts share a Cat5, and then these will plug into a punch down block over in the control panel, and that'll punch down the wires from the wires from these guys here, all these wires over here. This side of these guys is the wires that go to the control panel, the switch control panel and the main panel. And these wires over here are the wires that go to the other control panel and then the turnouts. So kind of trying to do it all modularly at the workbench and then just be able to install it reasonably quickly.
One of the things that you showed, and I'm going to make it, we're having a bathroom rebuilt, which is, why I don't sleep. But the tile guys used this laser goodie that you talked about. And
Yep.
I was so impressed. They set it up so it was level and that sort of stuff. And then every tile is horizontal and vertical. And
Yep.
as you say, it's like nothing at Home Depot or one of those places. And I mean, I don't know about anybody else, but I spend my entire life at the spirit level praying to God that I don't have a little piece of dust on the end of it when I try to level things off. So if anybody's going to try to build something that is sort of level, one of these things is a great investment.
Yeah. So actually, if you look at this is that vertical line you were talking about in the level right here. And what I actually was able to do is I moved that over really close to the mirror, and I realized the mirror is 1/8 of an inch out of square. So I actually was able to take this photo. I wanted to cut about 5 inches off of this end, so I wanted the break to be right in the middle over here. And so what I did when I cut the 5 inches off was I actually cut it 1/8 of an inch longer on the top or the bottom, I don't remember which, so that when it went over there and aligned, it aligns perfectly with the wood over here. And I was able to just, this thing, it's on a head and you can just twist it so you can move this line around. But like I said, the beauty of this
is you don't have your picture up.
Oh, I don't. I'm sorry. I'm talking about something and not putting the picture up. Okay, there it is. So yeah, so if you look at this is the vertical line. What I was able to do is move that over and put it right here, right next to this frame. And I was able to determine that the frame was out by 1/8 of an inch. And that worked out really well. And this is just, I just put this thing mounted. I mounted on the top of my camera stand, made sure it was really nicely level, and then set it up. And it really is a great way to level your room. And like I said, it was kind of a deal on Amazon when I bought it, but I think I spent about $38 for it. It really it was not as expensive as I thought it would be. And it's not one of the ones that goes around in a circle, you know, it's much more just a pure line. So,
Well, I gotta get one of those just to have one of those.
yeah, this is here. Well, yeah, it's a little bit more now. I think I paid less for it when I bought it, but
I live in a 1914
so
big old house in Berkeley, and I mean big and old. And we don't have, I don't think there's anything in my house that's level.
that's true. I'll throw that in the chat too. I mean, I'm not sure that's a good, but it seems to work pretty well for what I was doing. I've had it set up in there now on the tripod for weeks as I went through this process, because I basically established the level with the one box I built and then of leveling everything else to that. So that way the whole room will be at the same level.
Well, boys and girls, this was absolutely, I love listening to Earl and feel so jealous about this. I have to go play grandpa and father and all those types of things. So hopefully I'll be able to find another free Saturday morning in the near future. Y'all take care and have a wonderful weekend.
Have a good one.
See you, Jesse.
Jesse, talk to you later.
Bye now.
Yeah,
By
bye
the way,
everybody.
is anybody going to Novi, to Michigan, other than me? Is everybody avoiding Michigan?
Waiting for Nashville next year.
Yeah, I kind of decided to go. So anyway, well, I think we'll probably call it. We've got a new dog, and I've got to go and do new dog duty. So, why don't you everybody have a great week, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Thanks, Phil.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Earl. Thanks. That was great, Earl. I need
Great
to buy
job,
me one
Earl.
of those
Thanks,
Kitwood
Phil.
Hill turntables now. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.